Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends. Guys, welcome back to r/EntitledPeople, where Karens seem to think the world revolves around them and nobody else matters. And in this episode, it's all about the worst customers ever, guys. We've got Karens calling 911 on themselves, attacking other customers, making wild complaints. These stories will leave you shaking your heads. It's gonna be a good one. I hope you enjoy the lineup today. Subscribe if you're not subscribed. And as always, you can send or link your post to this email right here. Let's dive in. This happened several years ago, when I worked as a construction project manager for a company that serviced retail point of sale systems. The job was for everything, from adding and removing a register to installing all the electronics in a newly constructed store. One year, I took a camping and off-roading vacation in a remote area and was supposed to meet some friends. They then called to inform me that they were about 6 hours late. Since I knew some people at the local grocery store that I'd finished doing IT remodeling for, I walked over to say hi. When I got there, I found out that half their front end was down. The manager asked if I could help, and since I was killing time, I told him yes, if my boss approved the overtime. The overtime was approved, and it quickly became apparent that the issue was that the cleaning contractor had dismantled the registers the night before to make it easier to clean. I fixed all but 2 lanes, and those had damaged power and data cables. I told the manager that I could fix them with parts from the local store. I also asked if I could park my truck in the vendor-only spot, since his parking lot was full, and I would need some tools I carried in my truck. He agreed, so I got in my truck, picked up the items I needed, and then parked in the vendor spot. This is important. Both registers needed the cabinets dismantled in order to replace the damaged cables. I fixed the first lane and got it operational, and then I moved to the second lane, which is right in front of the customer service desk. I made sure the close sign was up, and I had a 6-wheeled cart blocking the register. I was lying under the register belt in order to connect the new cables to the register base, when all of a sudden I feel someone kicking me. The person kicked me again, hard, so I lashed out with a steel-toed boot and I hit Karen right in the knee. Of course, the force I booted her immediately sent her to the floor. I also found out that she was knocked out briefly when she hit her head on the cart she had moved. Now, what happened was she decided that my lane should be open. She then moved the tool cart, tossed the close sign on the floor, and she kicked me for ignoring her. Now, what she failed to notice was there was a local cop at the customer service desk, asking if they wanted the lifted truck in the vendor spot ticketed. The manager was directing him to where I was to see if it was mine, and they both saw the woman kicking me. The cop calls an ambulance for Karen, and then asked if I wanted to press charges, which I did. The store also pressed charges, as she had been banned and she was violating a no trespass order. She later pled guilty to the trespass and an assault charge, after being informed that a police officer witnessed the attack and a security camera recorded it. My employer's legal team informs me that I was being subpoenaed for a deposition because she was suing both companies for compensation for my having broken her kneecap and giving her a concussion. A week later, I was told this was cancelled, as the judge had dismissed the case with prejudice due to her having initiated the violence, according to the police report. Holy smokes, what an encounter that was, guys. And honestly, I'd say that Karen deserved that instant karma, and I bet she didn't expect anyone to retaliate to her actions. But yeah, like, that entitlement was on another level. Like, what in the world possessed her to start kicking a random stranger who was clearly working on something under there? With that said though, I really hope she learned her lesson, especially when the judge dismissed the case on the account of OP defending themselves. Like, it always baffles me when Karens hit people and then cry for lawyers when people fight back. The audacity of some people. Okay, so do I have a story for you? I work alone at a dry cleaner / laundromat, and on this day, a lady comes in and she hands me her tickets to pick up her dry cleaning. The woman had more than the average bear's worth of dry cleaning spread out over a few tickets, so I add up her total twice and check to make sure it matches her receipt. I tell the woman, okay, your total is $82. And hearing that, she looks at me flabbergasted for a second. She then says to me, no, no it's not. The other guy who works here told me it's $72. I just respond, I'll double check the math. I then add everything up again and I say, nope, I'm sorry, it's $82. See? That's when she argues and says, no, you're wrong. Why would he tell me it's $72 when it's not? He must have been giving me a discount. Let me pay the $72. I tell her, well, he might have misspoken because he wrote right here on your ticket $82. Karen then says, well, you need to get him on the phone, or I need to talk to your manager because all I have is $70. To which I say, I'm sorry, my manager doesn't work at the store. I'm in charge for the day, and she then stops me right there and says, well, I'm gonna need his number. Now, the woman was huffing and puffing at this point, and I was also getting shaky. My boss had given me a no-nonsense policy, and she tells me to ask customers to leave and not come back when they get indignant. She also doesn't want me calling her on her days off, especially over stuff like this. So yeah, the woman says again, I'm not paying any more than what the man told me. $70 is all you can have. I tell her, that's fine if you want to pick up a few things. We can hold on to the rest until you can pay for them. And that's when she loses it and says, are you effing kidding me? You're gonna be stealing my clothes? I can take them if I want to. They're my clothes. I respond, well, we've provided you a service and I'm not gonna give them back until you pay for them. At this point, she goes to her clothes and she starts tearing them out of the bags. She's throwing bags all over the floor, huffing and mumbling and tearing her clothes off the hangers. And she says, these look like crap. I'm not paying for these. I then make the worst mistake of my life. I chuckle. Now, not to be condescending, but because I'm really uncomfortable and baffled by what's happening. Even after 5 years in retail, I'm in awe every single time someone yells at me like this. I still constantly get shocked that people can be so aggressive and hateful towards strangers. Anyways, I chuckle a nervous, this lady's going to kill me laugh, and Karen loses it. She screams at me and says, this is not an effing joke. I'm not effing playing with you right now. My husband is gonna kill me when I get home if I spend $80 effing on these clothes. Do you understand that? Do you want me to die? He's already pissed off with you for taking so effing long to get his clothes done. You do not want him to come here, and I do not want to bother him with this crap. He's pissed off with me, so let me pay $70. Of course, hearing that, it makes me uncomfortable, thinking her husband probably hits her or something. And I say, ma'am, please stop cursing at me. There's kids in here, which there were. The lady then says to me, I'm not cursing at you. If I was cussing at you, honey, I'd be calling you a dirty, fat, good-for-nothing, effing pig-faced looking bitch. And I'm not calling you any of those things, am I? It's at this point I've hit my limit, and I tell her, I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to ask you to leave. You're being very disrespectful. She then says, you can't do that. I'm gonna call 911. And I'm thinking, okay. Now, at this point, I was really confused, and Karen takes out her cell phone and she called 911. I can hear her say, hello, I'm at this dry cleaner, and I'm having a domestic dispute. We need an officer right away. I feel like my life's in danger. Yes. Thank you. Karen then hangs up the phone and she gives me a smug look. I look around for a bit, trying to wrap my brain around what's happening. I just tell her, okay, well, I'm just gonna go get some work done while we wait for the police. I begin to pick up all the trash and hangers she threw all over the floor. In retrospect, I should have left them as evidence she was being crazy. The police station's right up the road, so it wasn't a long wait. Oh, and right after she called the police, she calls into her workplace and she was telling them she was dealing with police. The officer came in and he was super polite and calm. She recounted her story, which was mostly true, if a little biased. It was me not giving her a discount, me not calling the manager, and she also said that I owed her money that she was missing by not being at work on time. She also told police that I told her to leave after she called 911 because I was trying to hide the evidence. I then said it wasn't true, that I have everything on camera, and that she called the police after I asked her to leave. Of course, the officer looked a little confused and he asked me what happened. He then turned back to the lady and he said, "Did this employee hit you?" She replied, "No." The officer then said, "Then what can the police department do for you today?" She then said, "Well, officer, I'm not happy with the service. I need a discount." He then turns to her and says, "You know, I don't want to discourage you from calling 911 when you need to. You should call if you're in danger, or in the case of criminal activity. But this is a dispute that the police department can't settle for you. Do not call us for crap like this. Got it?" At that, Karen just says, "Yes, officer, that's a good idea." He says, "I agree." He then tells her to step outside so he can get her information, just in case she needs him again. And with that, they left. He took her information outside, and then she got in her car and presumably drove to work. The woman came back the next day and she paid $82 for her dry cleaning. She didn't say a single word to me. Honestly, that woman was so lucky that all she got was a warning, because clearly that was a misuse of 911. Not to mention, she destroyed store property. But who knows, maybe the cop didn't want to escalate the situation any more than it was already. Like, maybe he thought letting her off with a warning was way better than having a Karen go full-blown nutso, just flying off the handle, attacking and biting him like I've read about so much. And another thing, I also want to add that I've read way too many posts, guys, where Karens just lie to get what they want. And I might be numb to it, but the story about her husband wanting to murder her over $10, I just want to say I don't believe it. Like, people say ridiculous things to get discounts, right? But let me know what you think. Alright, so I've been working in a grocery / clothing / general merchandise retailer for about 4 years. Mostly, I work up at the customer service desk, which entails printing up money orders, processing wire transfers, selling tobacco products, cashing out lottery, and primarily returns and exchanges. With that said, about a year or so ago, during a slow part of the day, a man who was in his mid to late 50s comes up to me at the desk with an Xbox to return. The guy said he bought it a couple of weeks prior for his son, who decided that he wanted a PlayStation instead. The guy said he purchased the PlayStation somewhere else and he just needs to return the Xbox to get his money back. Now, unfortunately, even with a receipt, gaming consoles, CDs, DVDs, and video games are non-refundable once they've been opened, due to people scamming us by swapping out their broken units or doing shady stuff. I've always thought this policy was completely reasonable, especially since my store only deals with brand new products. So I calmly explained to him that once a console's been opened, we can do nothing but exchange it for an identical product, and that's only in the case of a defect. At that, the guy scowls at me and he demands a manager. And I'm thinking to myself, fine, awesome. I can see where this is going, and I don't get paid enough to deal with the brewing storm of attitude. So I call up the electronics manager, and he comes over to talk to the customer. The customer explains that he doesn't want the Xbox anymore. He wants his money back. In return, the manager tells him our return policy, basically verbatim for what I said. He then demands a different manager, this time much louder. And I'm thinking, wow, okay. So I give my direct manager a call and ask her to come over. She comes over, and she gets the spiel from the customer about how he wants his money back and how we're stealing from him by not giving him a refund. She then asks the electronics manager, who's still standing there, what our policy is. He informs her, and then she looks at the customer and she says something like, "I'm sorry, this is our policy. If there's anything else we can do for you, please ask this person." She then gestures to me and the man explodes. The guy's yelling and screaming how he doesn't want this effing thing, and it's ours and we have to take it back. Now, there was some more screaming about how we're dirty thieves and how we're stealing money from him and how it's illegal. Lots of yelling. I then call the store director, the boss's boss's boss. He gets paid enough to deal with this BS. So yeah, the director, who's a completely rational, cool dude, comes up, and after patiently listening to this guy's ranting for 10 minutes, gives him the same answer that he's gotten from the rest of us. And that's the last straw for this unhappy customer guy. The guy then claims if we're not gonna do something for him, he's calling the police to arrest us all for theft. And yes, he said theft. I'm stoked to see if he does, and apparently the managers are too. So they tell him he's free to call the police if he wants to. So the dude picks up his cell phone and calls his lawyer, or at least claims to. He then leaves a message detailing the situation. Then, the guy screams at us that his lawyer doesn't have time in the middle of a workday to answer a call from one of her clients about stupid stuff like this. He then makes a second call to the 6 o'clock news, saying he wants everyone to know how crappy this retailer is, and then screams at us how we'll all be out of jobs and no one will ever shop here again. And it's a nationwide chain. I'm pretty sure we're all gonna be fine, especially over a few $100, but thanks. He then makes one final call to the police, and they were the only ones to answer the phone. He says that the customer service bitch from this retailer has stolen hundreds of dollars from him and is being backed up by all her dumb managers. The guy's screaming at the cops over the phone, telling them to come now and arrest everyone. It takes the cops 30 minutes to show up, during which time my managers have gone back to their jobs and I'm filing away some paperwork, and the dude has plopped himself on the floor in front of my desk, having some kind of sit-in or something. Every time a customer enters the store, he yells and screams at them saying, "Don't shop here. They steal your money. They're a bunch of effing thieves, these idiots." Eventually, the police show up, and the dude brings them over to me, and he has the most smug look on his face. But it won't last. The guy declares to the officers that I took his money and refused to give it back, which obviously puzzles them as I'm an effing employee, and I'm covered by 5 cameras at all times. I clarify I didn't take anything from him. I told the officers that he bought an Xbox a couple of weeks back, opened it up, played it, and now he wants to return it. I also explained our return policy to them. I then showed them the copy of this policy, which was hanging by my desk, and I can tell the poor cops are dreading dealing with this guy. They then give him an ultimatum. He can either not get a refund from us and go home, or he cannot get a refund and then go to jail. Well, that's when the angry dude screams, "I'd rather go to jail than let these effers win. I'm not leaving without my money." Now, I don't think he was getting it. The nice cops try one more time to let this man go, but he just kept screaming and screaming how he's not leaving until he gets his money. So yeah, the cops just handcuff him and start heading towards the door. That's when I realize his Xbox is still sitting on the counter. I grab it and run after them. One of the cops takes it from me and thanks me. And honestly, I'm pretty sure the guy would have strangled me if he hadn't been handcuffed, because he screams, "It's all my fault, he's going to jail." Yeah, it was definitely OP's fault he went to jail, not the fact that he was given 2 chances to go home and did not take it. Like, I just don't know why some people let it get to this point. Like, there's a store policy regarding returns and exchanges, and by purchasing the product, you agree to that policy. There's no arguing that. Like, I just don't know why the guy called the cops and thought they would take his side. Congratulations, sir, you called the cops on yourself. I'm a 33-year-old female, and I work for one of the largest airlines in the world. I'm a reservations agent, and my department handles reservations for our frequent flyer members who have status. This event occurred 5 years ago, and to this day, it's one of the most entitled people I've ever dealt with. So one evening, I received a call from a passenger demanding compensation because the flight arrived later than scheduled. Now, in cases like this, the cause of delay is what determines if compensation's offered, what form of compensation will be issued in, and how much. So while searching through the reservation to determine the answers to these questions, I discovered that the reason the flight was delayed is because the captain of the flight, a male in his early 40s, had a heart attack mid-flight and he died. The pilot also had a wife and I believe 3 kids waiting for him at home, so it was heartbreaking that he died so young. Even more so because he had kids that he would never get to see grow up. Now, because of the tragedy, the flight was diverted to another city to allow officials to remove his body from the plane. So the passenger calls, demanding compensation for the inconvenience of his flight, causing him to make it to his destination late. He kept yelling at me on the phone that he had been late to his friend's bachelor party, and he missed all the fun stuff they were doing. Even after I explained the reason for delay, he felt he should still get some kind of refund or voucher, solely because of the inconvenience, and he said the pilot dying was our fault. He was saying that we handled things poorly and we should have just continued to his destination, a 7-hour flight, and then taken the pilot's body off the plane. The guy then continued to say a lot of ignorant and cold-hearted things, always insisting that we inconvenienced him and he's entitled to compensation. I eventually lost my patience with this entitled a-hole, and I told him, "Sir, I'm so sorry you were inconvenienced and missed your friend's bachelor party." But this man was barely 40 years old with a wife and kids. They feel having to unexpectedly plan and pay for his memorial service to be quite inconvenient as well. But they understand that this was something completely outside of our control. There was nothing we could have done to prevent this. Well, the guy still didn't care. He continued to try to argue and he wanted to speak to corporate, and he said he wasn't going to stop until he got some sort of compensation for his troubles, and that we were going to give him a voucher or a refund. The guy also threatened that he would post on social media about the horrible customer service and the flight delay. I basically told him, good luck with that, and then ended the call. If someone dies and you're inconvenienced, get your head out of your ass. You know what? Some people do truly believe it's me. And in my opinion, yeah, the guy totally went about it the wrong way, and he was an ass. But what he was asking for is not unreasonable. Like, I've been given meal vouchers before, guys, for a flight that was a few hours late, so I don't know why the airline didn't compensate the travelers at all. Again, the guy could have handled it better and not been so inconsiderate. And this person says, yes, it was a tragedy, and that's a terrible thing to happen. But unpopular opinion, you're wrong. Your airline should have given vouchers to every single passenger because you did seriously inconvenience them. Not to mention how terrible it must have been to have the captain of the flight die. My wife is already a nervous flyer, and I can't imagine the panic attack that would have followed that announcement. The fact is, the plane was diverted to an entirely different city, and every passenger was probably afraid because the person flying the plane died mid-flight. And you offered the passengers nothing? Are you effing kidding me? I might have been nicer, but this is BS. Guys, let me know your thoughts though. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our entitled people. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy stories. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's in our entitled people, another episode, where it's all about entitled Karens saying they know the owner when they don't, and the stories are so good. Guys, if you missed it, go check it out, and myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.